Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking a look at, I don't know if you can read it on your screen here, but this says Fatal Fury Wild Ambition version 1.00. You'll see on the bottom it says SNK Corporation 1998. Now I'm not sure that's when the game came out because a lot of times the copyright screen in these games isn't like correct to when the game came out, but there's not really that much exciting stuff in here. The cool part is I actually have my Neo Geo CD controller hooked up for this, so if I go into the I/O test, input test, all the buttons actually I set it up so all the buttons correspond with the right one, so A button, B button, C button, and D button. And then of course, joystick, start, A and B gets us out of that, and exit. And now in our game options, there's not too much. I have this all reset to factory spec because I just did initialize, and the only thing I really changed is demo sound on and language as English. I'm guessing violence makes some kind of hit effect, but I really didn't notice anything. And this you just exit out. And then of course here in system options, I went into coin settings and set it to free play. That's all. Other than that, there's nothing really amazing in this menu, but let me go ahead and show you what's going on here. If you didn't see this way long ago when I did that new pickups video, I'm just going to show you the Neo Geo Hyper 64 here. Here's the Hyper 64, and you can see the Fatal Fury Wild Ambition cartridge, or Gendin Setsu Wild Ambition, however you want to say. That's actually what the label says. But since this, I'm guessing, is an American board, it's the American version. But yeah, you'll see there's the JAMA harness. Here is the sound harness here. And then, of course, power supply, video converter, normal stuff. And one last thing I want to show you, once we get back over to the couch here, is just a couple things in the kit. I'm sure when this video is actually uploaded, I will have like HD scans that you would have seen in the beginning, but like I'm gonna go ahead and zoom all the way out because I'm actually zoomed in. Well, if I could zoom out instead of zooming in. Unfortunately with this camera, it will zoom all the way in and then you might be able to zoom it out. Can we get out? Can we zoom out? There we go. Now we're zooming out. Sorry about that. But here we go. All the way out. And here is the Hyper 64 kit. It's just a fairly standard box, big enough to house that humongous cartridge you just saw a minute ago. And I'll just show you the goodies you got in here. We got two different non-used move scrolls here. As I said, I'm sure I'll have these all scanned. Well, there's two of each, so that's actually kind of cool. And the reason why a lot of times you got two of each with these things is that it would be set up for a versus setup, so each person would have their own arcade cabinet. Then you have the arcade manual, which is ever so slightly smaller than like a standard arcade manual, all in Japanese. And then there is the how to play card and another how to play card. So these probably would have been like on the marquee like this or something. However, they would set up the thing. And then finally, well, I just want to mention that there's only one of each of these, but then there's two of these, which these are the big marquee poster things, and they have a little bit of that how to play stuff. So that's what this kit consists of. And then of course, as I said, after all of that, you would then have the cartridge as part of it, because when I take this board down, I will then put the cartridge in the box. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get out of the test mode here and then take a look at some Fatal Fury Wild Ambition. So you just go to exit and hit the A button. Everything is controlled by the A button here, which is the red one. And then it's gonna do the Neo Geo Hyper 64 boot. And of course, the intro would normally play here, but you're not gonna see that due to I have it uploaded in another video. And let's get right into this and take a look at Fatal Fury Wild Ambition. Okay, and of course, here is your good old-fashioned how to play thing, which is actually helps in this one, which shows you the punch and the kick button, and then the C button does your special attack, and the D button actually does a shifting planes, kind of that 3D aspect. And then the overdrive meter on how that works. And now, as you can see here, there are a total of 10 different characters available in this game. But the character I'm going to play as is Terry Bogard. Now, in the original gameplays I was trying of this, I was actually trying to play as Mai, because she's a character I'll often play as in King of Fighters and other Fatal Fury games, but no matter how hard I tried, I could not beat Billy Kane in match 7. So I figured I'd give it a try as Terry Bogard, and since you're actually seeing it right now, I actually beat it as Terry Bogard. And as I was saying earlier, the screen said copyright 1998, but this game actually came out January 28th of 1999. And now the only port that this game got was on the Sony PlayStation, released on June 24th of 1999 in Japan, and November 30th of 1999 in North America. And my only guess would be is that means that there was no European version. And I think it was somebody who had recently done a video on this game on YouTube at one point. They were showing a comparison between this and the PlayStation version. And honestly, I had not really noticed that I really hadn't noticed that there was like big differences between the arcade version and the PlayStation version, because to be completely honest, as far as the PlayStation version goes, the most play I really got out of that is maybe booting up the game and playing a couple matches. But it's unlike what you're seeing here. I never really like got through a whole match of the game, like a whole arcade mode. But now, the whole gist of this game is that the game retells the story of the original Fatal Fury game. It introduces Toji Sakata and Sugumi Sendo to the series, and places Mai, Kim, and Lee Zai-Fei as participants of the original King of Fighters tournaments. Ryoji Yamazaki also appears as a mid-boss character, and Ryo Sakazaki make appearances, as well as Mr. Karate, tying the events of Art of Fighting 2 to this game. And I'm one of those people that, like, a lot of people, when these games came out, this game and, of course, the Samurai Showdown 64 titles, a lot of people were opposed to them for some reason, and they were like, oh, well, SNK makes such great 2D fighting games. Why would I ever want a 3D version? And I always think to myself, there's like, the game doesn't have a problem just because it's 3D, and especially on the Hyper 64 version here, the graphics look so great. And the gameplay is actually fairly similar to the 2D games, other than the rolling in and out of scene. But a lot of people just seem to be opposed to that 2D to 3D conversion thing. I could remember the same thing actually happening with Street Fighter EX as well. People are like, oh, Street Fighter's 2D, I'd never want to play 3D version. Although I will give them a little bit of leeway there. The first Street Fighter EX kind of had that Virtual Fighter, very blocky look, whereas this game looks so smooth. Now, as far as the differences in the PlayStation version, I've noticed, this game tends to have a bit of a smoother look to the models. And of course, the big thing that is very noticeable when it comes to this game compared to the PlayStation version is all the extra animations and stuff in the background. And I think I've also heard that some of the music is different as well in the PlayStation version, that they had changed for some odd reason. Now, as far as the gameplay goes, Wikipedia explains this as gameplay is similar to that of a 2D fighting game, even though it's a 3D fighting game. The button layout for controls are similar to Real Bout Fatal Fury 2, but includes a new move called Axis Shift, which is just that thing where you hold the D button and press a direction. That's really the only, like, quote-unquote 3D thing, other than, like, some throws kind of, like, twirl around a little bit, but a lot of 3D games actually end up doing that. And what I was thinking before is the whole axis switch thing kind of reminds me of Battle Arena Toshinden, which Battle Arena Toshinden actually has a move where your character rolls in and out of a scene, so that's what that really made me think of. And now it was saying here, the feature allows players to move their characters left or right using 3D movement. Characters attacking uses punches, kicks, and heavy attacks, which kind of is that, like, C button special move. It's kind of like your heavy attack. Every character also has an assortment of special moves and desperation moves, now called super powerful attacks. Super powerful attacks can be performed only when the health meter is flashing red and does not use the heat meter. So kind of similar to your desperation moves in Battle Arena Toshinden, which kind of did the same thing. But as opposed to this game, in Battle Arena Toshinden, those desperation moves were only when your health was really low. Like, it only started flashing red when it was, like, a little bit. Well, here's some cutscenes that randomly happen here, so you can watch these. Okay, and it continues here saying, much like in Real Bout Fatal Fury 2, players are able to perform throws, counterattacks, and pursuit attacks. They can also taunt and recover quickly after being knocked out. Fatal Fury Wild Ambition replaces the power meter from Real Bout Fatal Fury 2 with the heat meter. The heat meter starts at 50% full at the beginning of every match, although it can change between rounds of the same match. Players fill the meter by attacking or taunting their opponents, but taking damage or being thrown decreases the gauge. If a player takes damage but their opponent stops attacking them, the meter will rise to 50% again. When the player fills the heat meter, the message Max OK will appear. Players may perform an overdrive or heat blow. The heat meter will be close to empty if either move is used. This can also happen if the player takes too much damage or performs numerous counterattacks. If this happens, a danger message will appear. If a player takes too much damage with a nearly empty heat meter, the player will overheat. this causes the player to get dizzy, kind of like in Street Fighter 2. If you've been knocked around a bit too many times and you get into that dizzy thing, it's happened to me a couple times, and it always happens in like the most inopportune times, and this is becoming vulnerable to the opponent's attack. And now it says here, a new feature introduced in Fatal Fury Wild Ambition allows a player to block an attack at the movement if it hits, which causes no damage when the offensive opponent is pushed away. A novel attack is introduced in Fatal Fury Wild Ambition is the unblockable heat blow. A player may stun or launch the opponent into the air and perform a heat blow while being attacked by the opponent to interrupt their attacks. Using a heat blow decreases the heat meter when the user is close to danger state. Fatal Fury Wild Ambition changes potential power, shortened to P power, in-game attacks, and renames the overdrive power, and renames them overdrive power. Overdrive power attacks work differently from the P-power attacks of the old games. The player can perform overdrive attacks once the heat meter is full, regardless of how much health the player has. Using overdrive power decreases the heat meter close to the danger point, and as I've discussed recently, when you get like your danger and you get too beat up too much, then you will end up getting all dizzy. Now, typically what should have happened there is that Raiden should have been, or whatever character that you end up facing should have been in the same stage as the character that you just fought. But what will happen is if you lose the match, you end up facing the character in like the normal stage that they would be in. So what you're seeing here is me facing Raiden in his regular stage because I ended up losing to him way too many times. And now that Li Zhangfei is apparently a secret character in the arcade version, but I've never seen that character myself in this version of the game. And then, of course, the secret characters in the PlayStation version are Ryo Sakazaki and the Duck King. And now, I'm not gonna lie here, I lost way too many times in this, and I will say it like right now in the video. When I did the capture of this gameplay, the total length of the capture was 3 hours and 17 minutes. And the funny thing is when I edited this gameplay down, all the gameplay ended up being 23 minutes, and of that 3 hours and 17 minutes, 2 hours and 6 minutes were just me losing repeatedly to Geese Howard. Because what I had first tried when I was first playing this is to like fight him like I normally would, but then I employed my good old-fashioned kick the boss in the head repeatedly until he dies strategy, which kind of seemed to throw Geese off because he expected you to fight him in close quarters, but when you didn't, the AI just seemed to get confused, and sometimes you could get through. Now, this was the match that I could not get past when I was playing as Mai, and I must have faced Billy for quite a while, repeatedly getting beaten. And you can easily see how much I've lost in this, because the time meter's up to 46 minutes. But now, as far as the PlayStation version goes, they have a reception thing here. The PlayStation version received mixed reviews according to the review aggregation website Game Ratings. In Japan, Famitsu gave it a score of 25 out of 40. Also in Japan, Game Machine listed the arcade version in their March 15th, 1999 issue as being the third most successful arcade game of the year. So, it does look like this game did a little bit better when it came to the arcade version than it did to the console version. But considering there was no Neo Geo Hyper 64 home console, pretty much PlayStation was the only way that this game could be distributed without SNK having to make another piece of hardware for the home market. And yes, that fire move that Billy Kane does, he always tends to do it when I'm about to die. And I remember when I was playing as Mai, there were so many times I was so close to beating him, and he would do that, or the thing where he throws you up in the air and then shoots you with his stick like a machine gun, and always end up winning. Now, the other ways that this game was distributed were just the PlayStation version, getting ports on the PlayStation Network. It was downloadable for PlayStation 3, and PlayStation Portable via the PlayStation Network on April 25th of 2007, which of course was common practice at the time that to re-release PlayStation games on PlayStation Network. And now, as I said, you're not going to see the best technical gameplay here, because I swear the AI in this game is, like, fixed, so if you try to fight him, unless you're, like, super mega ultra elite at, like, fighting games, like people who can input, like, 37 moves before the first one is even done, I don't think there's any way to beat this guy except for making a silly strategy like my kick the boss in the head move strategy until he dies. Which, the funny thing is, when I was actually playing this, I was just remembering Tekken 6, that I did the same strategy, the kick the boss in the head move until he dies, because the AI just never can sometimes not figure out how to deal with that right. Plus, in a lot of fighting games, if you're like a jumpy type of character, the game gets thrown off so badly when it's expecting you to be on the ground just punching and kicking. But if you looked at the top above my life meter where it says time max, that actually means that you've gotten more than 59 minutes, 99, like basically you've got more than an hour of playtime, which, as I told you, in this match alone, I ended up playing more than 2 hours and 6 minutes to beat Geese. And that's a move that he does that's very annoying, is his Rising Star. There was one time during my multiple attempts to beat him where he actually said Rising Star, and I ended up kicking him in the head, and then he didn't do the move, and I was like, yes, it's the most powerful move that Geese has, but if you kick him in the head right after he says he's going to do it, he just decides not to. And I can remember when this happened, I was so happy that I finally was able to beat him, and then you just get, like, a no ending. It's like, yep, I beat him, I'm gonna put my hat back on, and I'm done. And I definitely have to say, after playing this game for so much and taking so long to figure out how to play it, it is definitely a great game. And I would imagine it would probably be a heck of a lot better with 2 players as opposed to just playing against the AI. And as I'd made mention of in the beginning there, was actually just normal difficulty. I could have just put it on easy and just got through really quickly, but honestly, I didn't feel like doing that. I like to play a lot of these arcade games on default settings just to see like what that like real arcade experience was like. So I could kind of feel like this is what it's like if you were a player of this game in the arcade. But yeah, I definitely have to say Fatal Fury Wild Ambition, especially this Neo Geo Hyper 64 arcade version, is a very good game. The PlayStation version is a decent port. It plays well. It doesn't look nearly as nice as the arcade version here because, of course, the Neo Geo Hyper 64 with all its custom chips and all its extra stuff that made the board so expensive to produce is just a much more graphically intense version of the game. But either way, you're going to get a decent Fatal Fury. But if you're one of those people who don't like 3D versions of 2D games, you're going to find nothing to like here. But it really does play exactly like Fatal Fury, with a couple of 3D differences like kind of sprinkled in just for fun. And I remember when I was watching these credits when this was actually happening the other night, I was thinking, oh, I'm never going to get on the leaderboard. But then I realized since the game is like set to default, just simply beating it gets you on the leaderboard. And the funny thing is, even though I got past time max, you'll see in just a minute, it'll just show the time is all the way to the end, and I still ended up getting on top of the leaderboard. And see, it's 59 minutes, 59 seconds, and 99 hundredths of a second. But I somehow still ended up getting on the leaderboard because, as I said, beating it gets you on the leaderboard since all the times were maxed anyway. It was the Terry Bogard win, so that's what it was. And if you stick around till the very end here, I actually just let the demo play through one more time so I could see my high score on the high scores menu, because who knows if the game's going to keep it for the next time. But yeah, this has been another Game Nexus Arcade video. I highly recommend you try out this game if you're open-minded and like 3D versions of 2D games, and I shall see you later. Bye!